Had to mute your mics, everyone, or I'll have to mute it because we are live now, and this is the second part of our discussion on has the Medu Netcher been deciphered. And for those who are just joining us, hopefully you're coming from the first presentation that was on my channel, and you got to see what I presented and certain aspects of which I didn't get to present at the SaNeter or House of Consciousness debate, or what was supposed to be a debate there on the question of has the Medu Netcher been deciphered. And so this was my presentation part of the night, and there were other presentations, and maybe they will present them on their own channels. But I wanted to keep the content separate from the general discussion so that for those who want to just get the information, they have the ability to digest it. So hopefully an hour is good for, had to mute there, Mike. Hopefully an hour is good. Have to mute your mic now. And so sorry for my jumbled speech here. This is because we're getting some people into the forum here now, so I gotta play admin and talk at the same time. But just to recap, this is the second part of our presentation. Not necessarily our presentations, it's conversation aspect of the presentation. And I just wanted to have a separate conversation from the presentation that I had so that we can get, a few people's thoughts on not only my presentation and the other presentations, but the debate itself, the lack of the debate, whatever's on their minds, and to answer any kind of questions from those in the chat room. So just doing a little stalling so that there are individuals who can come to the chat and ask their questions. So if you have any questions, I have my phone on me and I can see the chat. And so before I ask any questions, I want the panel to introduce themselves. I know the order is going to be a little different here on y'all screens compared to what I see, but I'm just going to go from my right to left. And so immediately to my left is Wujawu. So Wujawu, can you unmute your mic and introduce yourself?
All right. Hotep, ETM Hotep, and peace to the family. Black African Power, Amara Squad up. And yes, this is brother Wujawu, member of the Amara Squad, as well as the Seshu Mani Medu Netcher. And yeah, just keep it short and brief. Yeah, this is your brother Wujawu. I'm that cool guy.
All right. We have Sister Naya. You can unmute your mic.
Peace, family. This is Sister Naya, Voices of Fire. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I'm a mother of 2, and I just love helping people. So it's an honor to be on the panel tonight.
Already. Next, we have Sister Monica.
Hey, peace to everybody. Peace Asar, peace to the panel, and everybody up there watching. I'm Monica Lamb. Most people call me Mo, and I'm just excited to be amongst great people.
Already. We have Sister Mel P.
Peace, family. Peace to the panel. This is Sister Mel P. I am a new fan of the Amara Squad.
We'll get into that hopefully maybe later. And last but not least, there'll probably be some others joining us a little later, is Brother Black Panther.
Star, I'm on here, Brother Issa.
Oh, well, Black Panther left, I guess. Well, he'll be back. And so, well, last but not least, Brother Jahi Issa.
Yeah, AKA EZE41. I'm sprinkling you with knowledge.
Yes, that's
They gave me
Dr.
that name in the chat room, E40. So I said I'll start calling myself E41.
Already. Well,
No, we had a beautiful 1 hour conversation, myself, Brother Wajaru, and Ankh with Dr. SOY Keita. And we brought up your name too. We talked for about an hour.
Already.
You know, come in on the Google Hangout one day.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to do that. And he's talking about Dr. Shore Marker Keita, the biological anthropologist out of Howard University, African American brother, very well renowned in his field. And maybe we can get to some things of his later. But just to inform the audience, you know, I wanted to have this panel of people who were actually there at the so-called debate / divine intervention. And, you know, just wanted to get their take on the event itself and the presentations and the issues surrounding it. And so we just had one more person join the panel. So, Brother Nahisi, can you introduce yourself?
Hey, how you doing, family? Black African Power, Brother Nahisi. I'm just dropping in and out because I'm at work. I'm gonna be in and out.
Already. So yeah, before I get started again, you can ask questions in the chat. I will try to monitor the chat as tightly as possible, and you know, to see if I can, you know, get to your questions. And so I see a question here by a Sean P. And the question is, what is the oldest Egyptian dictionary, and was it published by any Africans, or did they assist in creating the dictionary? That's from Sean P. And so I think the oldest dictionary was created by an individual by the name of Birch. I forgot his first name, but to my knowledge, I don't think that any African people were involved in the creation of that dictionary. And I think that was one of the arguments from the opposing side. If somebody knows otherwise, you know, y'all can chime in. But to my knowledge, I think it's Birch, because even E. Wallace Budge drew from his dictionary. I mean, Champollion had a small list of words, but in terms of a dictionary, I think it was Birch, then Budge, and then some other folks, you know, around that time in the late 1800s. And so, but, you know, we have dictionaries now by Africans who consult African languages and who can read the script, who have done, you know, major work in this area. And so anticipating that question, that's one of the reasons why I showed Dr. Mubabinge Bilolo earlier in my slideshow, and you can see the dictionary that he created. And so they're working on larger dictionaries in various different languages. And so I hope that someone answers your question. Does anybody else have anything to add to that? Any corrections, you know, at least on my part?
No, I believe that's correct. Samuel, speaking about Samuel Birch.
Yeah.
He's the first one to do a dictionary, what would be considered a dictionary. But you're right about Champollion having a extensive vocabulary list, but not on the scale of a dictionary. Yep.
All right.
So he also worked on the grammar as well. Speaking of Samuel Birch.
Peace. Yes. I'm looking in the chat. I'm not seeing any particular questions. So for those who have seen the presentation that was just an hour before this discussion, and you have any questions, please hit me up here. I'll try to monitor the chat as much as possible. So for those of y'all who were there, who saw via the live stream that never happened and had to go through Sister Monica's Facebook live feed, you know, what was y'all impressions on the debate itself? And then we'll get into the other issues later. So anybody, y'all can open your mics and anybody can join in.
Yeah.
Guess
And
I'll-
my thing with the debate,
We'll go Jahi first and then Wujawu. I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, my issue was that it was never ever a debate, right? Because we know that the Medu Netcher has been. But I was looking forward to just the camaraderie that I thought would take place because I've watched and heard so much about these legendary debates, and I was happy to see that the Amin Ra squad had made it to the top of the totem, because I know we're building with Brother Sanjetti over the years in Delaware that this was the purpose, 3-4 years ago. Why wouldn't they allow some real scholars like you guys to come in and diligence to the subject matter? But what I took out of it the most impressive thing to me was listening on the side to a lot of the young brothers, young warriors, say that they decide after hearing SaNeter and watching these debates, they made the decisions of whether or not they were going to sell drugs, gangbang, or go in and out of jail, or start studying and learning. And that to me was so transforming to hear these brothers speak like that they were in the streets selling poison to our people, heard a debate, heard some videos, heard some lectures, and said, hey, this is not the way to go. This is the way to go. And so if that is the ultimate impact of the debate, then it was a success. Again, AKA E41, sprinkling you with knowledge.
All right, Brother Wujawu.
Oh yeah, I'll yield to the sisters over there first, because I was unable to attend, and I saw it from the stream, so I'll give my comment last. But if not, I will.
So it seems like Mel. I know Mel P was having some trouble earlier, so she may tap back in. Sister Naya, you have any comments since you were there?
Oh, here I am. So for me, the debate, what really stood out for me with the debate is how the Amara squad was able to adjust to all the drama and all the adversity that was going on. I know I've seen a lot of the presentations, and it seems like you guys specifically conducted yourself in a way that allowed people to really not get too much information about the topic, but a lot of like basic information regarding the decipherment, the history of the decipherment, why it was deciphered, and then provided like some key points. It wasn't as extensive, but I think that the way that you guys were able to really adjust to all the adversity, that was like really important to me. And the atmosphere, especially in the beginning, it was a lot of unity. It was like a real African spirit. People were feeling good. And then the Amara squad was basically able to deliver a presentation that was professional, that was complete, and it was really informative. So for me, I was taking pictures a lot, so I was in and out. But for me, it was really the professionalism and the ability to adjust and adapt to that atmosphere.
I appreciate your commentary. Mel P, are you with us? You can unmute your mic.
Oh, yes, I'm here.
I'm not sure. I think you dropped out. So I'm just asking everyone of their opinions on the debate themselves. You know, the debate itself. What you thought about going into the debate, and you know, what did you notice and what did you observe? You know, at the venue in Harlem on this past Sunday.
Okay. Well, I was impressed by the high spirits of the Amara squad. Wait, baby. Yes, no. You know, amongst all the controversy, I was just surprised that you guys were still, in high spirits about everything, and you still wanted to do the lecture. And I was impressed with. I see you guys prepared for this. You guys put a lot of time into everything. Sanjetti had those pamphlets to go along with, the presentation. How you got the crowd involved. I'm new to all of this, the Medu Netcher. I mean, I went to the museum tour last time, but the information is real heavy. But you guys, the way you were breaking it down, I was trying to get it. I was in there though. But I was just impressed with. I can tell you guys were very prepared to go against them. I was really looking forward to that. I was Team Seti and Pharaoh at first. I was going with them hard because I thought you guys were beating up on them. And then when this whole fiasco happened, it made me look at their character and then pay attention to what was going on. And then I could see lies and all type of craziness going on. And then I paid more attention to you guys and just realized, okay, these are real scholars. I didn't even know that you had books, Asar. I didn't know that. I mean, man, I was just impressed overall with you guys. And, you guys weren't throwing shots or anything, you guys were just ready to give the information out. So I would say I was impressed with Amara Squad.
I appreciate it, sis. I appreciate it. Jahi Issa always having phone problems, so he may jump back in a little later in the discussion. Yeah, my thoughts, I was very disappointed, as I've said before. And it is more so because of the level of ish-talkitude that was going on for approximately 3 months straight on what they were going to do, what they were going to prove, how we basically weren't ish. And they were going to destroy the Amara squad come December the 18th. And then 3 days prior to the event, they pull out on some whack excuse that it was just made up on the spot. And like and then it's just so much misinformation that's floating around about the so-called contract and what could be done, what couldn't be done, and all that. It's just ridiculous. And so there was never a clause that they could not curse. The only clause is that you couldn't slander one another. In other words, you couldn't get on stage and make something personal about your other opponent. You couldn't call them out of their name. You couldn't do any of that. But you could curse all day. That's specifically the words of SaNeter. And so to come on the live streams and argue that, SaNeter tried to favor the event towards us by saying no cussing is lame and straight up is just a lie. He said no such thing. And this all came about as a result of the time issue. Now everyone had an hour to speak, allegedly. Now SaNeter gave everyone an extra 30 minutes and they went off. How do you get off for having an extra 30 minutes to to present your information. What SaNeter did, however, was just break up the hour and a half. So it's not an hour straight of somebody talking, and then it just seems like a super long event. And so, you know, in 30-minute segments, you would get your information out. And so we didn't see anything wrong with it. We just said, cool, we just adjust our plan, as the sister said earlier. But for some reason that seemed to be a big deal for them. And you know, it just caused all kind of chaos. And then just a exuberant amount of money that they were requesting, and just a whole bunch of stuff. It was just a terrible energy, and you can feel that energy, you know, even going into the place. So it's no secret it wasn't as packed as, you know, it would have been, but you know, people still showed up and we still presented, and you know, the vendors were there. It was still a lovely event until one point, and we can get to that a little later. But I'm going to go back to the chat. Sean P asked another question.
I want to give my view first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I yielded to the sisters, but yeah, I just want to say this, because this can't be emphasized more, that and I'm hearing this a lot. And matter of fact, the sister Mel P said it. It seems like we were prepared. You know, we were able to adjust and prepare, and I attribute that to the fact that myself, Sanjeti, Asar, brother Jonathan, and even Netcher Neb, who weren't there, and I wasn't there. I wasn't able to attend, but we do this all the time. So it's really nothing for us to adjust if somebody puts a monkey wrench into the time layout, you know, like there was an hour per person, but then at the very last minute, the 11th hour, you know, the time layout was switched for, you know, half-hour segments. So of course we didn't see any problem with that, because actually technically, and I'm sure everyone will agree with me, we don't even need a PowerPoint presentation to refute the claims that they've been making for the past 3 months. The only reason why we would even need a presentation would be for visual aids. But if it wasn't for that, we just need a microphone and an audience. That's it. You know, so the adjustments came at no expense to us. We didn't cry about money. We didn't cry about any contracts. We didn't cry about cursing. Now, the thing about cursing, now we know Uncle Keck curses just as well. I won't say just as, but he curses a lot, and he's cut down on it. But so nobody could run that excuse that you know, we're gonna be docked $500 for every curse word. I mean, that just wasn't true to begin with. But even the logic is not sound. So I wanted to emphasize that. But in looking at it, I have to thank Monica for Facebook live streaming it, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be able to see any of it. But the parts that I was able to see, I think the presentations were really good. I could tell that the energy kind of shifted when a break was taken. Like you say, we'll probably get into that later. But it seemed to be a good crowd. Now, the drama that happened leading up to the event is very disappointing, but it shows that the people that still attended, they were there for the Amara squad. So it was good that the Amara squad was still present, showed up, no complaints, you know. And I think that needs to be emphasized, you know. So, but I'm disappointed because the people were deprived all the way around. They were deprived of the side-by-side comparisons of the information, you know. So, you know, in light of that, we have plans, because SETI and Pharaoh has since published their presentations now. We can walk step by step, point for point, blow for blow, and refute every single claim, because we already have confidence that we can do it. And matter of fact, we were overly prepared, because after seeing their presentations, everything that we had in the slide presentation for the event was already refuting it. The book came out 5 days prior to the event, and that refutes almost everything that they were saying. So they were going to lose regardless. You know, we could have I mean, the computer could have broke down. Like, you know, I saw where you had a malfunction. That would have been fine. Like, no sweat. You know, it'd be like no sweat, and we could keep it moving. So anyway, that's my take on it. I think I was disappointed because people are deprived, and I think we should still give it to the people, you know, to put this to bed, to rest for 2017, so we can move forward. So that's my plans, and that's what I hope to do.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I'm gonna get to some questions in the chat, and so we have another question from Sean P. And that is, will we be able to work on getting the proper pronunciations for Medu Netcher? Do you want to take that one, Wujawa?
Oh yeah. The answer is, well, we can do a very good job at it, and that work is being done as we speak, and it's going to take some time. The main tool that's going to be used for that process is the historical comparative method within linguistics. And there are some pronunciations that we can recover, but then there are some that we won't be able to recover as far as being historically accurate. And then that portion will have to be through a process of consensus, basically. But it is work that's being done, and we will be able to recover and discover some of the historically accurate pronunciations. But again, it will have to do with consensus, and it's a systematic scientific process. It's not like we're taking it out of random. People are just inserting the schwa or the e in between the consonants and this and that. As the opposing side, you know, harbors on, you know, the fact that we're not speaking it, therefore it's not translated and it's not deciphered, you know. So, but a lot of work is being done, and it's looking good. It's looking good. So,
all right. We have a second question from 42 Tribes. And it says, great question, Sean. I have an essay. I don't really, I think this is an incomplete thought here, but it says, in Boli's questions, how have you verified and checked Mboli's work? Are there any considerations to adding languages to Mboli's work or building off of it? I guess that's more towards me. As far as Mboli's work, before I even presented Mboli to the public, I went through a thorough examination of his work. But I did it in two processes. One, by using his methods on other languages which he has not examined. For example, Chiluba and the Yoruba language. And because those are languages that I work with all the time. And but also just engaging with him personally and getting a better explanation of his methods and things of that nature. And so once I understood it, and I already used my background in historical comparative linguistics and was able to consistently utilize the method and to get some exacting results, I was able to say that, you know, the foundation on which Mboli is working with here is solid. And, you know, it's kind of hard to explain because it's just a lot you have to know concerning the art of historical comparative linguistics. But, you know, if you have enough background in the subject, you know, it's easy to verify his work because that's all it is. It's the standard historical comparative method. And so certain people like to make it seem as if Mboli just went and did his own thing, and then now he published a book on it. No, what Mboli did was he forces us to go back to the basics, to learn the standard historical comparative method and to apply it to African languages. And so that's what a lot of the Africanist linguists have not done. And so they've made all kinds of assumptions based on faulty logic when it comes to the relationships between ancient Egyptian and other African languages and just African languages unto itself. And so I know that he's working on his next project, which deals with Indo-European coming out of African languages. And he dealt with it in his, 2010 work, which is the origin of African languages, but it was very briefly. And so now he's going to do a thorough analysis of it. So he's leaving the African languages in terms of examination alone for a moment, so he can deal with the Indo-European. And so he's not the first to notice that Indo-European has affinities with African languages. And so he would just be the latest in that string of linguists who have been able to scientifically make those connections. And so let me scroll down a little bit. Let's make.
There's one, hey, brother Asar.
Go ahead.
There's a question. Sister Flowers asked if we knew about the Eves of Ghana and Togo and their connection to Kemet. And what I wanted to, can I answer that?
You go ahead.
Yeah. What I wanted to say, we kind of deal with this in the book, The Origin of the Word Amen, in which this Ghanaian linguist wrote a little pamphlet, 10-page pamphlet, basically saying that the Amen is an indigenous tree word or West African word. But we try to show in the layman's term how the Amen is akin to many of the West and Central African groups. As Sheikh Antijop says, Amen is the God of all of Black Africa, right? So the Eves, not only the Eves, many of those groups in West and Central Africa, particularly the Eves, the Akans, the Yoruba, the Gambe, they are only recent migrants to West and Central Africa. What do I mean? Many of those small West African states, before the European slave trade or the European wars on Africa, they had only arrived into West Africa, some of them 200 years, others 500-600 years before this horrible Maafa. And so they were new and they were very vulnerable because they were small compared to some of the larger kingdoms that were already there. And so the Eves and many of those groups, it is possible that they did migrate from the East, but they also could have gotten this culture that we call Kemetic culture from the Sahel before Kemet became a nation state. This culture was alive and thriving. All right, so that sometimes explains some of the cultural similarities that we see in West and Central Africa to Kemet, right? And I'm not dealing with linguistics, that's Brother Asar's area. But from my own study of just going, and I studied under an Ewe priest for 15 years. And I can tell you that the culture, I have this saying, I say, if you want to see the pyramids, go to Egypt and the Sudan. But if you want to see the Egyptians and their temples, come to Ghana. Go to Nigeria. Go to the Congo. All right? If you want to see the Egyptians and their mystery systems, they're still alive in Africa today. So yes, we can say, Sister Flowers, that there is a possibility that the Eves and other West and Central African groups may have migrated or had some cultural influences, or may have added to Kemet and may have benefited from Kemet culturally. But we do know that the culture that we call Kemet existed in the Sahel region thousands of years before Kemet or Egypt formed into a nation state.
All right, appreciate that. And this next question kind of, in essence, could feed off of the question just asked you, or that you just answered. And this is coming from Aziz Fall. You mentioned the collagen. Are there any linguistic works comparing the peoples that claim migrations from Kemet? And what is your response to y'all got it from white boys? Now, to the latter part of your questions, I think I addressed that in the first conversation, you know, from earlier in terms of we got our information from white people. Now, white people have cracked the code. We got to understand in the early 1820s and 30s, African folks were dealing with some other issues. And so, you know, as far as the ancient Egyptian question and deciphering the script, we came later. But what the Africans lacked in terms of funding for archaeological digs and all that, they are numerous and they are rich in the culture. The Africans have the cultural keys to decipher the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. And so when we became expertise, well, we became competent in the scripts, we then began to examine African languages and cultures and started cleaning up, you know, some of the misinterpretations of the Europeans. And so one of those individuals, you mentioned the collagen that I made in my slideshow, was Dr. Kipkowicz Sambu. This is his own people who have the oral tradition that they come from ancient Egypt. They can tell you exactly where they came from in terms of the town, the two major towns in terms of To and Seas, and they're all in the Delta. And he wrote a book on the linguistics comparing, you know, the ancient Egyptian and the collagen. Matter of fact, he wasn't the first one to start comparing ancient Egyptian and collagen. There was a European researcher who in the early 1920s, by the name of Merker, actually G.W.B. Huntingford in 1926, started with a list of terms from the collagen language in ancient Egyptian, and notice the parallels. And this is before, you know, nobody can argue that some Egyptologists came and spoken to the ear of the collagen, you know, or anything dealing with the Christians. This is when they first met them. This is their first interaction with Europeans. And so from their first interaction with Europeans, and the collagen talking about, we come from Egypt. And this is our traditions and whatnot, and started making a word list. So again, this is from Huntingford, 1926, already doing that work, you know, proving that the ancient Egyptians, in part, you know, are alive and well amongst the collagen, the Nandi, the Sabei, you know, whatever names they go by in their different respective parts of East Africa. And so, again, there's Dr. Mubabinga Bilolo, who talks about the Chilubas, you know, origins in the Sudan and the Sahara and Egypt and their migrations down south. And so all of his works, you know, he argues that, you know, Egyptian is Chiluba, you know, whether we believe him or not in terms of that particular argument. One thing is for sure, and this is one of the reasons why I use Chiluba in all my works, is that Chiluba answers some questions about ancient Egyptian language that a lot of other languages can't. And there's certain aspects of their culture that cannot be explained other than there was either a relationship or some of these folks, families of these folks, migrated from, you know, ancient Egypt. But I argue is maybe the reverse, that it is actually from Congo, in that area, the Great Lakes area, you know, where the origins of the Bantu speakers is why there's such affinities with Chiluba and ancient Kemet. And so, and then you have Abubakar Musalam, who's dealing with the Fulani and the and Wolof migrations from ancient Egypt. There's a brother, Salu, who wrote his PhD dissertation on the Egyptian origins of the Yoruba people. You know, there are a lot of works by Africans on this question, and so I'm just going off the top of my head. So and I'm familiar with this poster, so I can send some links and things of that nature. So I'm scrolling down. Anybody else have something to say?
Nope.
All right.
What other kind of questions coming up?
I'm scrolling down. So I'm just seeing, comments. How many languages exist under the Negro Egyptian umbrella? To answer that question, I'm not sure. All we know is, what languages are that have been examined under the Negro Egyptian banner. And, he counts the Bantu languages, and Bantu has a number of languages unto itself. And so, you're dealing with a couple hundred languages just in Bantu alone, let alone the other, 12 or 11 languages, outside Indo-European and Semitic that was examined by Mboli in his text. And so you have a few others from, the Dagara Yoruba, from Theophilo Wabinga and some of his other works. And so it's a good number. And so I couldn't give you an exact number. I know that Mboli examined like 14 languages, or 14 languages in which includes 2 language groups, which is the Semitic and the Indo-European languages. But he also does a brief examination, of Sumerian, as well as a super brief examination of Meroitic. So he concludes that Meroitic, based on the little evidence that we have, because that's a truly undeciphered script, is more than likely a Negro Egyptian language. And so it's a number. So I'm sorry, I can't give you an exact number on that. Yep, they only wanted to defame our character. I'm just reading some of the comments. Somebody being funny. Earlier, somebody said that they asked for 7,000 each. And then somebody under that says 1,000 per chakra. I guess a stab at young Pharaoh. Let me see if there's any other questions. Just comments. And I answered the question for 42 tribes. Okay, yep. Answered the airway question. Someone says that they don't think their questions are smart enough. I'll just listen and comment. I would say ask your question anyway. This is a no judgment zone, unless you are Pharaoh and Seti, and we have some judgments. But other than that, ask your questions, no matter how silly you think it may seem. Yep, they lost before they even begin. Facts. I was trying to get paid. Yeah,
they lost before they. People just don't know. I mean,
ahead.
Really, like when did you prepare for the quote unquote debate? But we really know it was a debate. But when did you prepare?
I mean, because we deal with this stuff every day, I've started preparing way back in the year 2000. But but in all actuality, and they can tell you, I didn't put together my slideshow until like two days before the debate, that Friday.
Right.
Because I already had this information just sitting. So I was just taking stuff from my other presentations and putting it together for the slide. Like it was just that much of a light work that I didn't have to wait weeks and study hard and all of this, because we deal with this every single day. And I've already published a lot of this stuff that from my slides I already have in my book. That's so busy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, and I'm not saying I wasn't taking them serious, but I wasn't really taking them serious, because in the back of my mind, me and Nuck been saying this from the beginning. And matter of fact, I think who put together that video showing that at least Brother Unc publicly was saying that they're going to tap out. He didn't even think they was going to make it all the way to December 18th. They're going to find a way to get out. Yep. And that's exactly what happened. And so I'm glad I didn't put, 3 months of work into it, because I'd have been highly upset. I mean, I am highly upset, and not necessarily just upset. I expected it from them, but it's the people who I was concerned with, because the people had an opportunity to see both arguments juxtaposed to each other. And they were able to, on the spot, to clearly see, who was serious about this question and who was not. And so not only did they take the people's money, they deprived them of an opportunity to learn. And so this, it brings up larger issues within the so-called conscious community in terms of people's reliability, in terms of their character. And all of this just put a bad taste in the community's mouth when it comes to a lot of, just those of us who are engaged in presenting information to our people. And I think that's the bigger issue, at hand. It sounds like you're trying to say something, Mel P.
Well, my question, one of the red flags for me was, how come the Amin-Ra squad didn't have a problem with the contract? All these things that they were pointing out, and I was like, well, these are some intelligent brothers. I'm sure if the contract was janky, as they say, they would have pointed that out a long time ago, So I didn't understand that there, It's like, well, they're not complaining about it. So that's when I started to look into what they were saying about it. And then that's when I knew it was some BS.
I think one reason, real quick, is I guess the motivation. Like what motivated us to take on the challenge versus them, because this is something that we do, and it's for the people, because this is a serious question, because a lot of things about language in general, and more specifically about the Egyptian languages and everything, although a lot of people deal with Egypt, they wear Egyptian jewelry, a lot of people got Egyptian names, but a lot of people I guess take for granted the language and the importance of the hieroglyphic and writing systems and the invention of writing systems and so on and so forth. So it's really for the people. And money, any kind of money would have just kind of been gravy on the rice and not the meal itself. So we kind of went into it with a different attitude, totally different attitude. And the person that said earlier, they spoke true. Those two brothers were asking for $7,000 a piece, for $2,000 before the event, $2,000 at the event, and then another $3,000 in royalties for the footage, So, and that's absurd. That's $14,000.
Ridiculous.
So, we didn't have that motivation, so we didn't have a problem with any contracts whatsoever. So I don't know.
Yeah, it for me, it wasn't about the money. Now everyone was offered, money. Now I don't know what everybody was offered, themselves. I knew that I would get the lowest, so mine's was 500. I didn't care. It wasn't about the money, because it was an opportunity to teach our people. Because as I mentioned in the previous discussion, the study of agnotology, and I'll just use agnotology as the buzzword, it's this cultural production of ignorance. And if we allow, because you got to think about it like this, at least on the flyer, we're sitting here asking the question of, has the Medu Netcher been deciphered? I'm the only one who actually deals with Medu Netcher off of everyone on the flyer. Unc has already told them I don't deal with the Medu Netcher that way. And the same thing with Dr. Ma'at, but you see that they try to attack them, instead of the person who actually deals with it. So when we saw this, when the other two individuals, who deal with Medu Netcher on the Amin-Ra squad, got onto the live feed, and I'm speaking of Brother Wujawu and Brother Sanjeti, that they didn't want to engage us on the question, They wanted to direct all their questions to Dr. Mott and talk bad about Brother Ankh. And you can tell that they just aren't prepared for those who actually deal with it, you know, to get on to get into, you know, their behinds when it comes to this work. And it's just frustrating that these are the people who are out here with a super large following trying to teach our people. And so for me, I didn't have it, you know, it didn't matter. You know, I didn't even, all I asked was, you know, that I have a place to stay when I got there. That was agreed upon, you know, and that was it. You know, just have just have a projector there when we get there. I'll do the rest. I don't need anything elaborate or nothing to that nature. But they try to come in the last minute. You know, I don't know how much Unc was offered. I don't know. I don't care. You know, I don't count people's pockets that way. You know, I do know this, that I'm not somebody who is real familiar to a lot of folks on SaNeter's platform. I don't have that rapport with him to demand a large amount, even though I technically could. Being, you know, really, you know, the only published, you know, in terms of the people who are on the flyer, the only published expert on the subject, and my world renowned on it. But I don't care about that. You know, this is just an opportunity to present Africa in a good light and our African scholars. I wanted to introduce the public, you know, some African scholars who they may not be familiar with. So we always hear about Dr. Ben and John G. Jackson and all of these individuals, John Henry Clark, but there's a whole legion of us. That's what I want the people to understand. It's not just me up here. It's a whole legion of African scholars who deal with Medu Netcher and African languages and who are dealing with the pronunciation and correcting of any mistakes that Europeans may have had with the language in the writing script. A legion of us. And so that little list that I made on my last presentation doesn't even scratch the surface on how many of us there are. And so if somebody like me doesn't come in and introduce to the public these scholars, you may never know about them until, you know, 20, 30 years later or so. And so I'm trying to introduce them now so people coming in fresh into the conscious community knows that, you know, we have an army of scholars attacking these questions. And so someone just asked, can Medu Netcher be spoken as a language other than just read? Again, it just really depends, because, you know, Medu Netcher was not the same language over a 3,300 year period. And not only that, we have evidence that it was multiple languages being spoken in ancient Egypt. So when you say the Medu Netcher and in what time period, you may be dealing with a totally different language, which is one of the reasons why I showed in the first slide the Collagen language as one of the principal languages probably spoken in ancient Kemet. And so what you would get in modern Collagen is a modern variation of one of the languages spoken in ancient Kemet. And so if you learn Collagen, you learn ancient Egyptian. But we shouldn't be so focused even on the pronunciation of ancient Egyptian, which is why we study and compare other African languages. Egyptian is a language like any other African language. And not only that, it belongs to a family of languages. And so if you learn Yoruba, if you learn Ewe, if you learn Twi, if you learn Wolof, if you learn Chiluba, if you learn Amazulu, if you learn Dinka, if you learn Kalenjin, all of those languages derive from the parent language, which we call, after Theophilo Obinga, Negro Egyptian. And so you're speaking, quote unquote, Medu Netcher. Medu Netcher is a writing script. It's not the language. You know, Rowan Kemet is the name of the language that the ancient Egyptians called it, or they'll say Medu Kemet. But the writing script is Medu Netcher or Sesh Medu Netcher. And so, you know, you can always read the script. You know, the different time periods had different languages in charge in terms of its major demarcations. with Coptic being the last one on record. And Coptic is still spoken to this day in Egypt.
That's what I was about to say.
So, you know, the idea that the Medu Netcher, the language has been lost, is just a bunch of, you know, what I call kung fu treachery. It's just a bunch of BS.
Yeah, to that question, yeah, I was gonna say the short and skinny to that would be people could learn Coptic. That's like the short and skinny answer. You know, can Medu Netcher be spoken as a language? It still is. It's called Coptic today, but we have to get rid of this stigma. And watching their presentation, speaking about SETI and Young Pharaoh, they were going on and on about Coptic and being Greek and being Indo-European and being a homosexual language, a language of homosexuals and gay and this and that. And the language being some kind of symbolic, mysterious language. I think that has to be eliminated from people's minds. You know, people have to understand that the Egyptians or ancient Egyptians were speaking to each other. They were communicating. And there's a difference between the speech and the writing system. And what was chosen as far as the inspiration for the graphical representation of that speech just happens to be very pictorial-like. And it remained that way, unlike other scripts, such as cuneiform. There's no pictorial element of that anymore. It's just some wedge niches in clay. So I think it being pictorial is what's throwing people off because you're looking at objects and you tend to want to take the objects at face value than how languages are mapped to the way to sounds and how these pictures are mapped to words. And I think that's the major problem people are having. And once people can understand that, then a lot of these questions will kind of evaporate and go away.
All right. Dr. Issa, I have a question for you. Conscious Chats is asking, are you still taking folks on the trip back to Africa?
Yes, I am.
Straight to the point. I guess when time permits, you'll, you know, inform us of the details. You know, we'll probably have you back so you can give us the details of how all that's going to go down.
Most definitely.
But to the question, he said yes. They're going to be taking people back to Africa, and I assume specifically to Ghana.
Yeah, we're going to Ghana in March, early March, and in early August.
All right.
I got a question for you, Asar. Being that you used to be, it's no secret, you used to be a Hebrew Israelite.
Mm-hmm.
This is a question that I would ask the followers of Young Pharaoh and Sarasun Seti, but I think you could probably answer this. Is that if their premise is true, if we all concede to Seti's claim that the Medu Netcher has not been deciphered, that it's not even a language that could be spoken, et cetera, then how is it that he himself and all these other folks are claiming that Christians and the Hebrew Israelites have plagiarized from Kemet or have stolen this story or that story or this character or that character from Kemet? You know, how can that be reconciled? What would a Hebrew Israelite think about Seti's for all these years? Seti's been banging on the Hebrew Israelites, you know, saying that Moses came out of, you know, Egypt and the Ten Commandments, the whole nine. So what would it be the Hebrew Israelite stance on Seti's arguments?
Well, I don't know what their stance would be, but I would say this, that all Hebrew Israelites, all Moors, all Muslims need to do a large campaign and demand an apology from Sarasun Seti to every Hebrew Israelite, Moor, Nuwapian, and whatever, because his whole entire career has been based on arguing that these people copied from Kemet and and all of this, and he's made those arguments publicly. And so now if you argue that it hasn't been deciphered, because obviously he doesn't know what the word decipherment means, that means he didn't have any basis whatsoever to make those claims. And so every last debate that Sarah Sutton said he was involved in, automatically from this day forward, goes to the opposing side.
Yep. Exactly.
So, you know, that's what it is. Anybody arguing that Sarah Sutton said he won, you're lost. You know, Sarah Sutton said he has admitted defeat in more ways than one, whether he likes to admit it publicly or not. He admitted defeat by saying that the Medu Netcher has not been deciphered. You know, because he's not thinking 5 minutes in front of his face, he doesn't realize that argument shuts down all his previous debates, you know, with any of these particular religious groups. So I want y'all to get together, demand that apology, you know, from Sarah Sutton Seti, and let's see if he's man enough to do it. I don't think he is.
Listen, real quick. In addition to that, when people watch it, because you know they made it public now, Sarah Sutton Seti's part is called Part 1. Somewhere along there, he says that Amen. He starts to kind of bang on the word Amen and Amen as a deity, totally contradicting what he was teaching, previous videos and things like that. So I mean, really, I think people need to hold him accountable, and that's the problem with this social community. I don't think people hold other people accountable enough, and press these people for explanations of reconcile. How do you reconcile? People need to ask him, how do you reconcile all of this? You owe everybody an apology, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see how that happens, and especially after they get an additional, butt whipping as far as this point for point address of all their points. I think people should be motivated to ask those brothers. Every lecture, I don't care if they're talking about chakras, astral projection, the fifth dimension, aliens, or the Olmecs or whatever. Somebody needs to stop the presentation when they have a Q&A and ask for that daggone apology and ask for reconciliation.
I agree. We'll go on to the next question. Sean P seems to be full of questions tonight. He says, I hear Ben, Brother Black Panther, often mention the comparisons of Medu Netcher and Wolof. How closely related are the two, and couldn't that also give us great insight and understanding of the speech? Again, Wolof is a related language, and so it would be considered a dialect of Negro Egyptian, but Wolof is relatable, but not necessarily to well, let me take it back. Let me explain it within this context. As of now, I go by the Jean-Claude Mboli model of Theophilo Obenga's Negro Egyptian, and he has provided enough evidence to suggest that the Coptic language and the Middle Egyptian are two different languages that were spoken in ancient Egypt, and they belong to two different branches of the Negro Egyptian language family. And so these language families are broken down into, I should say, now I won't use that one, the Beher and Bere branches. And so Beher is B-E-E-R. It's basically spelled like beer in English. And Bere, B-E-R-E. These are the same words for liver in these two respective branches. He named them, those two respective branches, these names because of the way that the same word, these are both the same word, are pronounced. So you can see with Beher, the B-E-R, that both E's are inside the consonant cluster between B and the R. Whereas with the Bere branch, the E is it's a consonant vowel versus a consonant vowel consonant. And so the Wolof language was one of the languages studied by Mboli, and he classes it as a Beher language. And so when you look at the words in Wolof, they are closer to Coptic Egyptian than they are Middle Egyptian. And so it's closely related to an Egyptian language. But remember, as I said earlier, the Egyptian language is not one single language. It's several different languages. And the African school has been able to detect them and make clear distinctions and demarcations. And so that's the best way I can explain it without getting too technical. And so let me see. It says, so the Yorubas were new to West Africa during the slave trade period. Wow, not necessarily. And this is what we got to understand, that certain families may have migrated, but that doesn't mean like whole scores, like thousands of people, like in the biblical myth, you know, traveled at one time to settle in one area. It could just be a trickle effect, a large family who has moved, who is intermarried with a local group. There's many different ways and patterns of migration that have to be discussed. And so the Yoruba, some are from the Nile Valley, specifically the Sudan, and they met with some indigenous groups that were already there, and their cultures merged. And so some groups have amongst the Yoruba, have no recollection of coming from ancient Egypt, and some of them do, because they have different family histories that have come together and converged and became the Yoruba people. Let me see. Akbe Nawul, thank you, Dr. Issa. I know this sounds dumb, but I don't understand the chronological order of ancient Kemet. If you can explain briefly, that would be great. You want to take that, Wujawu?
Oh, chronology. Wow, that's actually a kind of heavy
yeah,
the conversation in and of itself, because chronology, there's I can say this, but it deserves its own conversation. But there are a few chronologies that scholars have reconstructed, and there's the long chronology, and then there's a short one, and then everything in between. So you know, that deserves its own conversation to really get into details about that. But it spans from, I believe the oldest date is 5700 BCE up to 394, you know, or whatever AD. And then the short list, I believe it takes it to like 2700 BCE on up to the 394 AD, somewhere around there. Don't quote me verbatim, but yeah, there's several. But that's a whole conversation.
All right. Somebody's talking about the Fulani and talking about Ngozi, says that he's Fulani, and then he's trying to argue, not Ngozi, but the person in the chat, that the Fulani were not taken into the slave trade, and that is incorrect. Some Fulani were taken into the transatlantic slave Holocaust. Matter of fact, I have a frat brother whose DNA traces also to the Fulani. And, you know, they got caught up in the mix as well, even though they were the major reasons for the slave trade, but that's a different discussion in of itself.
Yeah, I do want to go back to the chronology in terms of our topic today about the language or the writing system. Just real quick, the oldest attested form of what everybody knows as hieroglyphs or Medu Netcher is dated to 3320 BCE. So when you have people talking about writing or things prior to that date, just, you know, proceed with caution. You know, ask them for attestations or artifacts or things like that. So it's a different kind of conversation when people talk about pre-dynastic and people want to talk about the emerald tablets existing, you know, 40,000 years ago and things like that. That's, you know, that's when you get into the realm of pseudo-ism. So
Kung Fu treachery.
Yes. So the hieroglyphs, what they call the hieroglyphs, are first attested, or oldest attestation, I should say, to date is 3320 BCE.
All right. Now, someone asked Jehudi Ma'at, wouldn't you need to ask the native Egyptian who created the symbol to tell you what it meant? I guess I'll start it off on that one. If that was the case, then any ancient Egyptian outside of the individual and or individuals who created the ancient Egyptian script would need to ask, you know, specifically the creator what everything means. And so if let's say for the sake of conversation that Medu Netcher was created in 3200 BC by some random, you know, person. So anybody in 2400 BCE wouldn't be able to, according to this logic, wouldn't be able to read the Medu Netcher because the person who created it has long died since that time. So how did the ancient Egyptians know, you know, what the symbols meant? Right. Well, one thing you have to realize, and I heard Sarah Sutin Seti say this in his presentation, he tried to make the argument that there are no keys to reading the Medu Netcher. So we have no idea. This shows right off the bat that Sarah Sutin Seti has no background in Medu Netcher whatsoever. Because if he did, he would know these things called determinatives. These are pictures at the end of the words that tell you what the words mean, that give you some insight into how to classify the word. And those are the keys. And we're talking like a key to a map. So like, you know how you read a map and then at the bottom it has a key. And so it tells you what this symbol means and what it's associated with and all that good stuff. The Medu Netcher has that already embedded in the script. And so that's why, for example, I showed in my presentation one of the early names for the who is now called the collagen. They called themselves, according to the script, Sepi or Sipi, which is Sabei in modern, you know, pronunciation. And in that script, you have the graphings for the phonograms, and then after it you have the determinative of a two bow and arrows and a shield. As I mentioned beforehand, the collagen are the part of the warrior class of ancient Kemet, and so whole ethnic groups have whole jobs in traditional Africa, and so their job as an ethnic group was to be one of the military wings of ancient Kemet. And so in that word, you can see that the word itself has to deal with something dealing with military, because it has the glyphs, the key for interpreting the word, you know, built into the glyph. So I gave you that example, anticipating, of course, Sarah Sutin Seti's erroneous statement, I should say. You was about to say something, Mujabu?
Now I was going to say, and some words have two determinatives, and then you have what's called phonetic complements. You know, so they went out. The scribes went out of their way to to give you clues on the meaning and things to differentiate between what we would call homographs and possibly homophones and things like that. So I mean, that's just nonsensical claim whatsoever. But I swear it goes back to people thinking that this pictorial writing system is secret, like there was a secret language, or there's no language at all. These symbols just contain the mysteries of all humanity, and that is the mindset of early Greek philosophers or writers such as Harpalo, Diodorus Siculus, all the way up into the European Renaissance with Athanasius Kircher, which is, I heard Sarasun said he mentioned all these guys, but he doesn't realize that he agrees with them. He agrees with that mentality, that mindset, and not with the African side. But yet in his mind, he has it flipped around. So, but that's going to be revealed when we go point for point, step by step through their presentation. So don't look out for it.
Yeah. Okay. Sister Mel P. Now you mentioned earlier that you were a Sarah Sutin Seti and Pharaoh, I don't want to say fan, but you at least were intrigued and admired their work and teachings. So you know, for those of us who can't fathom how that could possibly happen with intelligent people, you know, can you tell us, you know, what it is that attracted you to their information, if it was their information at all?
I think she has to unmute.
Yeah, she has to unmute it.
Is she still with us?
Yeah, she would have to. You have to unmute your mic. I can't unmute you.
She may have stepped away.
Yeah, she may have stepped away. Well, we can, you know, move on from there. I'm trying to scroll down and see. Is the 500 to get you a bottle of Moet and Cuban? Somebody says, Asar, I know you used the 500 to get you a bottle of Moet and Cuban cigar. Well, one, first, I wasn't paid for the event. And two, I don't smoke and I don't drink. So I don't know what I would have done with the 500, probably bought some more books. But, you know, because that is my thing. You know, I have probably like 4 changes of clothes, but mad books. And, you know, but that would have probably been, you know, what I would have done had I gotten it. But no, I was not paid for the event, but that was what was promised. But given the nature of everything that happened, you know, some things didn't go down. So that's for the record.
Yeah, hold up. But see, again, I want to say something to that.
Go ahead.
That just speaks to, one, your character, and then two, the overall motivation of your involvement and then Amara Squad's involvement in the event. Because, you know, we could have backed out. And I say I didn't attend. You know, I wasn't able to make it, but I wanted to be there because, like I said, I was ready on the hangouts to go ahead and take those guys on. I mean, really, that's just how it is. But we still went, but we could have backed out, you know, because they backed out first, and that would have opened the door that we could have backed out and said, okay, well, if they back out, all the drama, because, you know, it was a split. It was a lot of people that was, you know, still going to go to wherever they went, because at first their intention was to even do harm to the event by trying to hold a second event just with them at the exact same time. They were trying to start their event at 2 p.m. along with, you know, the scheduled event that's been advertised and promoted. So they were going to actually hijack the promotion and the hype and the momentum of the people coming and converging in Harlem. They were going to split it by holding an event at the same time. So when we saw that, we could have easily backed out and be like, okay, well, I don't want to get caught in the drama. We'll just, you know, we could have just done it on a hangout. I mean, really, it would take us every bit of 2 hours to debunk their whole 4-hour presentation. Like, really. So I'm just saying that speaks to your character personally, but then the whole team as a whole, you know, the fact that you weren't compensated even with what was said that you would be. So that, you know, that just needs to be pointed out.
Sister Mel P, are you there? If so, you're gonna have to unmute your mic.
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing how anybody could
Well, I got a chance to spend. This is Maya. I got a chance to spend time with Mel P, and Sister Sci-Fi this weekend, and I think that she told me she was very excited about Pharaoh and the youth, and, you know, some of the new things that she felt that he was bringing to the table. And she admitted that she was kind of blinded by the fact that she felt that the Amaran squad was attacking him because he was young and he was teaching certain aspects of spirituality. And she admitted that she was just blinded by a lot of her anger. But hopefully she'll come on and kind of talk a little more about how she felt. But you know, she got an opportunity to kind of see eyes and the manipulation, especially I think by young Pharaoh. He's very good at changing the narrative and flipping the story. So, you know, her time like kind of chilling with Amara Squad and, meeting everyone. I think that she found out how authentic people were and that a lot of the things that were being said was untrue and just really propaganda. So that was, from my conversations with her, and we kicked it like 3 days in a row. So I mean, or 2 days. So she was basically like, she was blinded by that.
Yeah, I want to say.
Yeah, I heard her say that. I just wanted to, the public to get an understanding of, you know, how somebody could be drawn in, to such, charismatic individuals. But in the end, how charismatic doesn't necessarily equal good character, and as far as scholarship, good information. Um, and we know that Sister Naya, I was going to get to that a little later, because you've been accused of, conspiring with the Amon-Ra squad to sabotage, a so-called debate that was going to happen between young Pharaoh and a university professor. Can you explain or touch a little bit on that?
Yes, I certainly can. It was a very interesting experience because I'm not sure if everyone knows, but I primarily came into the community attempting to try to kind of, render some services to try to help with the liberation of African people. So I suggested that, I can possibly blog. And I was talking to Unc about blogging, about talking about issues that impact our community the most. So a lot of times what I will do is go on YouTube and try to figure out what people are talking about and kind of what the hot topic is for the week. And one week, I noticed that Pharaoh posted a video stating that he had a debate with a professor. And part of my training in public relations and communications is trying to really like make sure the information that I'm presenting is accurate. So I just sent a basic media request to the professor because he was an MIT graduate from a top university in Berkeley. So I just wanted to confirm it was correct because I really didn't understand why he would debate that Pharaoh wasn't a good or articulate, but I know that he doesn't necessarily have the experience. So I just wanted to confirm before I wrote about the event. And, from there, I was accused of conspiring with the Amara squad, being sent by the Amara squad, and being, a really bad person in that I just wanted to confirm an event. Mel P actually like was one of my strongest critics online. So like it was a pleasure meeting her this weekend. But it was an interesting experience because one of the things that I learned about Pharaoh, and I also got a chance to meet young Pharaoh in Atlanta. One of the things that I learned about Pharaoh is a really good promoter, and he does a really good job of flipping the narrative because in public relations you have to be able to tell the story, and a lot of people don't understand how Pharaoh does a really good job of flipping the story, promoting his events, and telling the story. And I think for him, I don't think that a lot of times I don't feel that he's concerned with.
Keep going. Don't ignore my phone.
Hold up. That's the kind of alarm.
Wow.
That was a phone call, so I gotta hit the backup later. But go ahead.
Yes.
You know how those
Yeah.
commercials, your ringtone tells your personality.
Hey, this is the default ring on this phone, so I just haven't changed it.
I just picture Bojangles or something. But hey, all right.
Right. So yeah. So I was just saying, like, he's the promoter, and when I met him in Atlanta, that's one of the things I congratulated him as a person in the media. I recognize that he does a great job with spinning the story. And I think with this debate in New York, he did a lot of the same things. He did a lot of promotion and debate hype. And I think that's one of the reasons why he wanted to capitalize at the end when things didn't go his way, because he knew that he had put in the work as it relates to promotions and he wanted to capitalize on it. But for me, overall, just to go back to the question, is that, it was an interesting experience because being new to this community, I'm somewhat of a naive in that I always give people an opportunity, to kind of show me their character and show me what they're really about before I start to judge them. And I find a lot of times in this community we don't give each other the opportunity to show our character. But I think that with this debate, I think Amara Squad really showed your character and showed what you guys stood for. With you stating you didn't get paid, um, all that money to go to New York, and then with Pharaoh and steady, pulling out of the debate because they felt that they wasn't getting paid enough. So, it was an interesting experience overall, because I think that with the women, a lot of times we're accused of being co-conspirators with the men in the community, and our talents aren't really recognized. And I think my experience with Pharaoh was that I think that people was looking at me as someone who was attempting to kind of damage his name, and they really didn't understand that, you know, I gave them a little bits and pieces of his character, because I don't think that Pharaoh did anything wrong per se, other than trust someone who was clearly being manipulative and dishonest about the debate. And I know I'm going on, but it was an interesting experience. Um, but I know me and Mel P talked about it a lot, about how in this community a lot of times people aren't telling the truth. It's really about the narrative. It's really about promoting their events and getting people to buy tickets, and not really being committed to the liberation of African people, but more committed to the dollar, to the money. And I mean, that came out, I feel, in the debate. It came out last weekend, because when they couldn't get their way, they resorted to selling tickets to an event that they hadn't really even planned or even had confirmed with, a lot of different venues. So, it was an interesting experience. I'm just glad that I was able to get through it and build relationships and meet new people and learn from my mistakes. I'm just grateful that I'm able to work with Amara Squad and a lot of the other people to give me an opportunity to continue to grow and continue to put information out there for the people, so we can be able to just continue to be strong and work together and hopefully build something.
Shay. I want to bring Brother Jahi into the discussion if he's still there. Jahi, Dr. Issa, are you still there? I guess not. Okay, well then, I'll shift this to Brother Wujawu. The question being is directed at me, but I'm going to spread it. It says, Asar, what is the Masonic definition of community? Like, I know because I'm not a Mason. Does the conscious community fit the definition?
I would say no. That's a short answer. No. And the reason why, though, is because I believe the conscious community, and we talked about this before, Asar, and that's probably is even more motivation to go ahead and do it. I think the conscious community, as we know it, is a misnomer for what we think it is. It's not accurate description of what we're dealing with, first and foremost. So any comparisons will be faulty. Any conclusions that we make will be faulty. So I think we need to straighten out what is the conscious community, and let's iron that out first. But that's another conversation I think hopefully we'll have very soon. What'd you say? You said January? Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring Dr. Issa into the conversation, because me and him was talking about having that discussion on the evolution leading up to the conscious community. Now, Brother Wujawu calls it the social community.
Yeah.
And what I call it really is more so an extension of hip hop culture and community. That's really what it is. And so in order to understand the conscious community, you have to understand hip hop culture, its origins, and how it's developed over the years, and to see how it has expanded its way in, or at least has jumped into this arena with the culture of hip hop in itself. And so the hip hop culture is something totally different than the communiversity. And that's what we'll get into. So, you know, for those who are wondering why we see what we see in the conscious community, because the conscious community is itself the hip hop community. And as we know, the hip hop community is built on youth culture, which is why there's a lot of immaturity in the conscious community. Because a lot of people don't want to grow up. They still want to attach themselves to the street, because street culture is, you know, what they've been living all their life. And so we'll get into the details of that at some point in the future. But to the specific Masonic origin, definition of community, we have a short answer of no.
Right.
But I did want to continue. Go ahead.
About people like Young Pharaoh, or Young Pharaoh specifically, people feeling that we attacked him because of his age. You know, I don't think I think that's misplaced, because you got to look at Young Pharaoh himself. He chose to call himself Young Pharaoh, but yet he wants to be treated and respected as an adult. That's number one. Number two, his character and his behavior is like that of a high school, you know, a person around high school age that's cursing and has that quick snapback that's kind of like, you know, ragging on people, joning on people, whatever the case is, and things like that. So what we do, or what we have been doing, is we would address his lack of rigor, his lack of research methods, and then his claims. Not so much him, because I don't even know him. Yeah, none of us know him, you know, whatever. And if you notice in all of our videos, whenever we do address him or address something about him, we're talking about the claims that he makes, you know, and trying to give him advice. I remember Dr. Ma'at was questioning him about his research methodology, and everybody saw it that night on SaNeter's platform, where he pulled up a photoshopped mummy of an alien, and he swore up and down that the DNA was tested and the whole nine. I mean, this is what this brother is saying. So we address that, we attack that, we criticize and critique that, not him as a young person. I think the whole young thing is an excuse, is to play victim. So, you know, I don't think people should get that confused. Don't confuse him playing victim with the whole young thing and what we're doing, because what that does is it's supposed to force us to back off. And no, that's just not going to happen. You know, young and old, you know, scholarship is about critiquing and getting to the bottom of accurate information. You know, we do it respectfully. We're supposed to do it respectfully, but that's what it's about. So we're not backing off of these claims. Him claiming that the Greek language is not spoken. So we're gonna address that. You know, stuff like that. So, young or not.
All righty, hold on. I'm asked this question. This is from Morpheus Waters. So why does Professor Williams say is, I'll just reword it. I think I know what he means. So why does Professor Williams say that the Medu Netcher has not been deciphered? You know, what recent work do you have that addresses all of his claims?
Yeah, well, hey, that's easy. Well, Walter Williams, in his book, The Historical Origin of Christianity, he has, among other things, in his appendix, he wrote an appendix where he's claiming that the hieroglyphic has not been deciphered, and he has a brief, maybe 5 pages of his points. I'm looking for it now. In the appendix, it's on page 146 in his book, and it goes from page 146 on over to page 150. So I guess 4 or 5 pages of information. But so what we've done as a Seshu Mani Medu Netcher, we now he wrote this book in 1992, and it's gone through reprints and revisions, but it starts off in 1992. So this has been left unchecked for all that time, and I've heard people address the question. I've heard Dr. Rakete Amin address it. I've heard Ashra Kwesi address it, but the way they addressed it was kind of in passing and in some kind of interview, whether it was Blog Talk or whatever the case is. No one has ever done anything writing to kind of elaborate more and address these issues. So what we decided to do, and plus in light of this event with Sarah Soon Seti and Young Pharaoh, as a group, the Seshu Mani Medu Netcher, we came together and addressed it point for point. And we had to give some teaching lessons. We had to actually educate people. So the book is written so we wrote a book called Has the Egyptian Hieroglyphic Writing System Been Deciphered? A Rebuttal to Walter Williams. And that was published December 14th, recently. And we wrote it in 2 parts. Part 1 is the educational part. It's basically dealing with what you need to know. So we define what decipherment is. We define what a grapheme is. We define phonographs, logographs, ideographs, pictographs. We go through the decipherment process in general as a scientific method. And all that good stuff. We outline how the hieroglyphs work, some fundamental information. Then part 2 is the actual rebuttal. So we refute all of the claims. So if you were to ask me the question, why does Walter Williams feel that way? My conclusion in reading his points, it's a case of the elder not understanding writing systems and speech and how they relate to each other, how they're mapped and they have this relationship, period. I think that's the overall reason. I don't think he has a full understanding of what that entails. Because, for example, I'll just give you a quick example. Let's see. What's the other? Okay, like for example, he said no one can put a phonetic alphabetical value to symbols. So we think about that for a second. He says no one can put a phonetic alphabetical value to symbols. That statement alone, it shows his lack of understanding, because he wrote a book using the Roman script that we use for English, and every single character in the English language is a symbol that stands for that represents a phonetic value. So he's writing in a book in the way that that answers that goes against what he's saying in his question. But I understand what he means. Symbols as pictorial. That's what I was saying. A lot of people don't have an understanding or can't fathom a picture, an object that you see in your natural environment or whatever the case is, standing for sounds in a language or words in a language, which we know more linguistic terms will be phonographs or logographs. Once a sign is used to map to a word or a sound, that's when writing is born. Prior to that, it's not considered writing. Pictographs in and of themselves is not writing, because it's not mapped to a linguistic element of the language, a linguistic unit of the language. So anyway, I know that was kind of long, but yeah, so it's published and we have it on Amazon.com and also MeduNetcher.com. And we wrote it anticipating the arguments of Sarah Soon Seti and Young Pharaoh, because we knew they were going to use Walter Williams, and they actually did. Sarah Soon Seti actually read the appendix that we addressed. So his entire argument in that portion of his entire presentation is debunked by this book. Like literally, seriously.
Basically. Word for word.
Other than the homosexual and gay stuff that he spent like 20 minutes on, everything else has already been debunked.
Yeah, it's clear that he doesn't know anything about debating. because all of that information was irrelevant to has the Medu Netcher been deciphered. And so, I mean, that's another discussion in of itself. But Mansueki Milandu, and I know I'm pronouncing that all kinds of wrong, asked Wujawa and Asar, what is the origin of the word Amen in African language? And also, what is the origin of the language in the Ikapata, misnamed Egypt or Kemet? Okay, let me break this. Is two different questions. And so he's asking for the origin of the word Amen. Amen is not one word. And so, you know, what definition are you talking about? Because, for example, there's one, you know, Amen to be hidden, and then there's another Amen meaning to create, to build. And so these are two separate words. And then there's other words built off of that root. And so this is the focus of my latest book, Mesubiti, that deals with paronymy and the alleged relationship between words that sound alike amongst indigenous people. And so there's many different origins to these different variations of these roots. And so, matter of fact, that's one of the things that I'll be dealing on. So Dr. Jahi Issa, who was just on, he's dropped out of the call right now. He and Dr. Salam Faraji have wrote a book back in 2005 called The Origin of the Word or the Name Amen. And it was really kind of an extended pamphlet from a brother who wrote that text in Ghana, who gave them permission to reprint it. But now they're getting ready to work on a second edition of the book. And so this second edition is actually going to expand on the book, and it's going to be different authors contributing to it, not just Dr. Issa and Dr. Faraji. So I am one of those people who are contributing to that expanded second edition to the origin of the word Amen. And so I'll be doing a thorough linguistic explanation on this term. And so which will go into your second question on the origin of the language of ancient Egypt. Again, it being a dialect of Negro Egyptian, and in its origin ultimately in Central Africa near the Great Lakes region. But that's another discussion in of itself. So I'll continue scrolling. Sister Naya or Mel P, do y'all have anything to say?
Got the sisters here.
You have to unmute your mics.
Getting quiet.
What'd you say?
Not say the sisters are present, but why? Where's the fire? Where's that fire at? Where's that fire at?
Okay, Sister Mel P.
On that last question, on that real question, I just want to make a statement about the brother, because I saw him post on Facebook as well. He uses a different word for Egypt other than Kemet, but he's implying that Kemet is wrong as well and things like that. So to him, I know he's not be able to answer right now, but to that statement like that, I would just wonder, how does the brother pronounce, spell, transliterate, or translate other words with those same grapheme? You know, those same grapheme combinations, and that being the either the charcoal by some people, or you know, crocodile foot by others, but then the owl. That combination, I would just be interested in knowing how would he do all of the other words, you know, that also start with those two graphemes. You know, like I said, I know he can't answer now, but that's just something that he would have to kind of reconcile if he says that Kemet, that consonation, the KMT, is incorrect or wrong.
Yeah, I mean, again, there are certain things that he would just have to know. Matter of fact, in the collagen language, the cognate for Kemet is actually Kemet. And so you wouldn't be that far off. It's just a long E after M that would distinguish, between the two pronunciations. But in other languages, it's an A after the K. So like when I talk about Chicam and Chiluba, that's how they would say the word Kemet. It's Chicam, because the T comes before, the T suffix comes before in Chiluba Bantu. And so you could say T-com, or Chi-com. It's the palatalized variant, of it. And so this individual here, he says, the person who asked the question earlier, he says, okay, for example, in the sense of Amen being divine manifestation, Amen comes from the Dogon Ama, which comes from a word, Kikongo, Amakongo, or Omakongo, or for short, a Congo. See, this is what we call folk etymology. The first mistake is arguing that Amen comes from the Dogon Ama. Amen and Ama of the Dogon are cognates, but the ancient Egyptians did not get Amen from Ama, or vice versa. And that's what I'll be dealing with in my expanded, talk on Amen. And so, matter of fact, I already deal with that question of relationship between Amen, Ama, Kanum, and Inyama, as I mentioned before, already in an article that I have on academia.edu for I said Congo and Kemet, or Kemet and Congo, a paper in honor of Dr. Kimbwadinde Kiabonseki Fukiao. And so, it's a lot to deal with. And so, I would have to have the PowerPoints up so you can see. But, that's a different discussion for a different time. So I just want to make sure that, everyone got the questions in. I'm not seeing any more questions. Anybody else have something to say on the panel? Because if not, I'm going to close this mug out.
Okay, just real quick, I want to say that was a good presentation on the, part one. And, I did get to see it thanks to Monica. I would love to have been there, kind of vibe, because, we do this kind of work all the time. So it for me, it would have been real interesting to see the crowd's reaction. I like to see how people absorb or take the information, and the interaction and the questions that they may have had afterwards. And I noticed that there was never a question and answer session with Amara Squad. There's actually a question and answer session by people who had nothing to do with the topic of the event, so I would have loved to have seen that, but for the fact that you went over it right now, it's good. I think a lot of people will be able to learn from it and see overall that, SETI and young Pharaoh really didn't have anything to bite on. And that's going to be even shown more when we go point for point, blow for blow, leaving no stone unturned to address all of their points, including, even outside of what you presented, everything, it's the after the fact, hindsight type of thing. So, but actually it's gonna be weird because we're doing it hindsight, like we're doing it based on what they did. But really, if the footage was available for what was presented on that day, people will see that everything was in line, like everything was addressed, almost just about everything was addressed already.
Yeah.
Separately. That'd be real interesting. But anyway, people could look out for that. We're gonna do that sometime in the very near future. So be on the lookout for that.
Most definitely. And I look forward to it. Now I can get back to my life of computer science and calculus and mathematics for this final that I have to take. But everybody else is out of school. I still got 2 more weeks. And, so I won't be dealing with the world too much until after that. But Sister Naya, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm still here.
Any last words?
No, I just want to close out by thanking you for having me on the show tonight. It was a pleasure. You know, just, my thoughts and how I felt about the debate and with Amaras now and a lot of the people in the conscious community. I got a chance to connect with some great people that, I barely knew, but I interacted online with. So I just thank you for the opportunity for having me on.
Sister Naya, I got a real quick question for you. Has the Medu Netcher been deciphered?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Cool beans, cool beans. Sister Mel P, we'll try one more time. Are you there, Sister Mel P? Going once, going twice, 3 times. I think something's wrong with her phone. But I just want to thank everyone on all levels who traveled to New York to hear the debate that never happened. For those of you who saw us through the live stream, and I know the SaNeter live stream just cut off on y'all. So, those who checked us out via the, those who attended, who broadcasted on Facebook Live, those of you who stuck with us this late, on this Friday, we know y'all could be at the club, dancing to Lil Yachty, whatever his name is, and all of the trap music superstars, but you chose to, vibe with us here, and I appreciate it for all of you who have asked questions and made comments in the chat. Thank you all for listening. We're going to keep, doing this work. Please support our works. Practically everybody on the squad has a book. You can find all our works on Amazon. Brother Sanjetti is the last of the Mohicans, but he'll be having some work out in 2017. Everyone should be having some new works in 2017 on various different topics. And so support, us, we support you. Tell us what you got going on so we can support you as well. And so with that said, leave comments, below. The first video is up for you to review. And you can go over it, at your own pace. And, again, thank you all for joining us, and we appreciate you. Y'all have a blessed night. Hotep, peace, be easy. All right.